of Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah. SubhanAllah, in our life we spend so much time doing useless things that we don't have time to do the useful things. We do so many useless things that we don't have time to do useful things. And when you speak to somebody, your parents, your imams, your shuyukh, anybody you speak to, your friends, everybody gives you advice on the things that you should do. But nobody tells you the things that you shouldn't do. You get the general advice, don't do this, don't do haram, don't do it. But what are the useless things? And Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he lists 10 things. We won't have time to do 10, we'll cover 3. But Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he says the 10 most useless things that people do. So when you can identify what's useless, then you'll avoid it and you will do the useful. So Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he mentions in his famous book these 10 items and he combines them together. But today we cover the 3 given the time that we have. So Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, the first thing that he says that is useless to anybody is ilmun la ya'malu bih. That knowledge that does not benefit you, the knowledge that you do not act upon. If you think about it, if you have knowledge to do something, you have information about a particular thing, you have an expertise, or give an example of first aid, you have first aid experience and knowledge, but the person in front of you is struggling, but you don't know how to act upon it, you don't know the actions, you just know the knowledge, you just know this is the thing, but you don't know physically how to do it, then that knowledge is useless. There's no point having that knowledge. But in this world, in the Western society in particular, if you go to school, college, university, there's one sentiment that's always been told to people, which is knowledge is power. If you go to a college, university, that's the advice you're always told. You'll see written in bold, knowledge is power. And that's not correct. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he says that knowledge is not power, but knowledge has the potential to become power. And you will see then CEOs, big corporate companies, they will tell you that knowledge is not power, because you could do a master's in business. You spend 4, 5, 6 years studying business studies, doing a master's in business studies. And so you have a master's in that education, in that field. But if you cannot set up, and if you cannot do what an ordinary CEO would probably do, is set up a business and run an operation that is successful, then you've failed in that studies. You've got the knowledge, you've done a business, you've done a master's in business, but you cannot set up a business that is operational. So that knowledge that you've just attained, spending 5, 6 years, has absolutely no benefit to you. It is absolutely useless. The same applies when it comes to deen. That you have the knowledge of deen, you have the knowledge of halal, you have the knowledge of haram, you have the knowledge of what is sinful, you have the knowledge of what if you act upon a certain deed, or if you act upon a certain instruction, that this is in particular the reward for it. That knowledge is useless to you if that knowledge does not push you towards good. If that knowledge does not push you to go into salah, if that knowledge does not push you to come and do a'mal, if that knowledge does not prevent you from doing zina, if that knowledge doesn't prevent you from doing sin, if that knowledge doesn't prevent you from doing haram like alcohol, gambling, drugs and womenizing and illicit relationships, you have the knowledge, which is a basic sentence. Zina is haram, which means all forms of zina is haram. But if that knowledge doesn't benefit you, if it doesn't stop you from picking up your phone and texting your bird and linking her up and going out for meals and cinemas and etc., then that knowledge is absolutely useless. Agree or disagree? Agree. And this is why the big giants of Imam of At-Tazkiyah, like Imam Ghazali rahmatullahi alayhi, Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, they write in their books that they tell their students, Imam Ghazali and Imam al-Qayyim, Imam Jawzi, all these Imams, they have thousands and thousands of students. So when the students, they would write to them that, Sheikh, give me some advice. These are Imams of at-Tazkiyah, spiritual Imams. So when they would write to their teachers and say, can you give me some advice on what I should do? They would write back to the students saying, there's no point, the advice was simple, there is no point you having any knowledge if that knowledge does not benefit you, if that knowledge doesn't prevent you or push you towards doing good or prevent you from doing evil. But the problem we have in this society, in the Western society, is that we are obsessed with knowledge. We're so obsessed with knowledge that we just want to get the books and we want to learn, we want to learn, we want to learn. We have to remember that knowledge is not power, but knowledge has the potential to become power. And there are three ways in how you can attain knowledge. Number one is through books, and that is kitabat. You study books and you can gain knowledge. But that's not the only way. Islam gives you two other options. Deen shows you two other ways of gaining knowledge. The second one is suhbat, which is your companions who you're around. If you're around dodgy friends that are going to do dodgy things, then they will have an impact upon you. So your suhbat is so important, the people that are around you, because you can learn good things from them and you can also learn bad things from them. So we also know that to gain knowledge can also be done via suhbat. The third thing is safar, traveling. Because the more you travel, the more you will learn. And you learn from traveling, from experiences, from seeing different people, how different people. So you might have a particular way of dealing with a situation, but when you travel and you meet somebody different, they may have a totally different way of dealing with a problem. So you learn from other people's mistakes, you learn from other people's experience. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, the second thing that he mentions is وَعَمَلٌ لَا إِخْلَاصَ فِيهِ. That action that does not have sincerity. وَعَمَلٌ لَا إِخْلَاصَ فِيهِ. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah is saying that the action that has no sincerity within it is absolutely useless. You got no benefit for that. It's not going to benefit you in any way, shape or form. Think about it. If you pray 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years you've been praying your salah, but if that salah doesn't stop you from doing sins, if that salah doesn't prevent you from alcohol, if that salah doesn't prevent you from gambling, if that salah doesn't prevent you from illicit relationships, then what good is that salah? That's an amal, isn't it? That's an action that you've done. You go out and you think about it, that when it comes to actions, when it comes to your a'mal, we fall prey, we become victim by riyah, which is arrogance, which is showing the dunya, which is showing people what we might call in our layman terms a show off. Yeah, you go to the masjid, you're doing some charity work, and from personal observations, what I've seen, this is very, very commonly done when it comes to charity work. So we're raising funds, and you think to yourself, the chairman or the secretary thinks, you know what, if I say I'm going to give £1,000 or a £50,000, and people are going to say, oh look, the chairman's very, very, mashallah, we don't have chairmans here, we're not talking about that, but we're talking in the general terms, or a celebrity, or somebody that wants to become an MP or a councillor, and they think, I'm going to now donate £50,000, and people are going to say, my name. This is often where we see riyah come in. This is often where we see that takabbur come in. Do you know what? It eats away at that ikhlas, that sincerity is not there. Because you're giving that donation, it doesn't benefit you. So that £50,000 that you've given, or even be a penny that you've given, if there is no sincerity in it, it's not going to benefit you in any way, shape or form. So those of us, Imam Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah says, right, the way you got to look at yourself is you have to then think, right, what's my life like? How much sins am I doing from Fajr till Isha? And if it looks like actually it's zero and that I am only in the obedience of Allah Azza wa Jalla, that doesn't mean you're stuck in the masjid, because that's not how deen teaches you. That whatever you're doing your tijara, you're doing your business, even to the extent, the way you are intimate with your spouse, the way you are intimate with your wife, husband, wife, wife, husband, if that is according to Sharia, then you know what? even that intimacy in itself, that sexual relation you have, is blessed because there's sincerity within it. So, if you now look at Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi, who was the giant of a hadith, the Bukhari Sharif, the most recognized hadith book, the authentic book in the whole wide world. Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi, in his book Al-Bukhari, the first hadith he brings in is the hadith of intention. And he says, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّةِ, that your actions are according to your intention. وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَّا نَوَى. Think about it. There's over 80,000 ahadith, and the first hadith he brings is about intention. Just to prove the point that intention and sincerity is the core at what you do. Imam Nawawi rahmatullahi alayhi, in his book Riyadus Salihin, again, which is possibly, I don't think there is a masjid in the world that doesn't have this hadith book. Riyadus Salihin, Imam Nawawi brings the first hadith, which is the hadith of niyyah, the hadith of intention. And the hadith says, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّةِ, that your actions are according to your intention. So you've got to fix your intention. And the simple solution to that, before you do anything, you just got to ask yourself, why am I doing it? If you're going to university, you're going to college, and you're studying a degree in mathematics, in biology, chemistry, the question is, why are you doing it? If it's because your mom has told you and your dad has told you, absolutely useless. Why? Because studying mathematics, studying biology, studying chemistry, geology, genealogy, all of this is knowledge of deen, or has a potential to be knowledge of deen. You're going to ask me, I'm crazy. How? I'll tell you how. In Juz 4, in Surah An-Nisa, Allah Azza wa Jalla talks about fractions. Allah Azza wa Jalla talks about percentages. Allah Azza wa Jalla talks about shares. Well, what are you going to learn about fractions and percentages and shares? It's school, isn't it? For you to do algebra, you're going to have to go secondary school. You're not going to learn that in year 1. To then understand, roots and square roots and, whatever. I'm not that expert. But you're going to have to study advanced mathematics to understand. So that's your mathematics done. To understand science, it's in the Quran. Allah clearly talks about the cycle of life. How from a semen it becomes a fetus. From a fetus it grows into a baby. And then it comes out into earth. Well, to understand the cycle of that, if the Quran's told you this, well, the only way you're going to learn this is if you go out to a university, to a college, to a school, and attain that knowledge. So therefore, chemistry and biology becomes part of deen. Genealogy becomes part of deen. If you want to then understand, Allah talks about Bahar, the salty water and the sweet water, and the hijab, the barrier that's between it. That's in the Quran. But for you to understand that verse of the Quran, what do you have to do? You will have to go to a school, you will have to go to a university, you will have to go to a college and attain the knowledge of dunya. Which is why I say that knowledge is not only just in the masjid, in the madrasa. Right? It's what you do with that knowledge. It's the intention that's behind that knowledge. If you become a scientist, if you become the biggest doctor, but your point is that my intention is to understand the Quran, subhanAllah, you've just attained everything that you need. Otherwise you become a doctor for a mere what? 90,000, 100,000 or whatever the salary is. That 100,000 is nothing, because the moment you go in your grave, is dead, you're gone, you've left nothing behind. And that's why Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he says that intention, ikhlas and sincerity is important. Without ikhlas, the amal, the action you do is useless. Number 3, and this is the last one, Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he mentions 10. The third thing, which is useless for you if you don't have the right intention. And subhanAllah, we have this issue in our society, in the Western world, is hoarding wealth. Everyone's got a bank account. But you go back 40 years, 50 years, even 100 years in the Islamic world, in the East, where we come from, where we originate from. How many people, forget 50 years, even 20 years ago, how many people had bank accounts? You had wealth, only what you needed. I have my granddad here, is from Bangladesh. I don't think he's still got a bank account. They had the wealth, what they needed. Hoarding is a Western mentality. You keep. Now, there's two types of hoarding. One is you hoard, you have photos from memories, from childhood, clothes, etc. That's understandable, that's a sentimental. But you've earned £100,000 salary. And you know what? You're hoarding it, you're keeping it. You only need 20,000, but you think, I'm going to save my 80,000 because I need it next year. I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy a house, or I'm going to bring out an SVR, or I'm going to bring out an S-Class, or I'm going to do, buy a business, whatever it is. Not that I'm saying anything's wrong with that. But hoarding is useless for you. Because why? It builds the characteristic of being greedy. Because what happens? The next door neighbor, the brother next door, the sister next door, they're struggling. As a society, as a community, if we all start to hoard and we all start to think, well, this is my wealth, I don't want to share it. What happens? Society becomes isolated. We all become siloed. Those of us that have been back home, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, you would have seen, right, in the villages, what we call a bari, what we call a house. There's a long bari, right? And there's like 10 families in that. And it doesn't matter if the man on the end, number 1, is got food, or number 10 has got food. The food, even if they didn't have it, they would share it because they belong part of that household. What's happened in the West? The Western society has made us so comfortable. It's given us, me and you, heat at home, so we're cozy. It's given us food on an open plan kitchen, so you get what you want, you eat what you want, and you throw in the bin whatever you want. But go back 50 years ago. I say it in Bengali because it sounds more nice. They used to have something called a khatal, which is your living room. They used to have called undal, which is your kitchen. And they used to have something called a ugar or gor, which is where they would keep the food, which is what we call the larder. Which meant that if the mother-in-law or the wife of the house, or the mother, when she would go to this ugar or the larder and get the food, she'd have to go past the in-laws, and they would say, oh my, don't waste it. Because there was that control. And then when you eat, there's no waste, because you've just finished everything you've eaten. But what's happening now? We've become siloed. So we've got an open plan kitchen. Again, I don't have a problem with that. I'm just giving an analogy. What happens is you then cook whatever you want. You probably only need 1 portion, but you'll make 3 portions. And then you only eat half a portion because the system can only take so much. And what do? You waste the rest of it. So hoarding is a Western issue we've got to give out. Where's the proof for this? I'm not pulling it out of my back pocket. Allah Azza wa Jalla says in the Quran, وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. So whatever Allah has given you, you need to spend from that. Don't be keeping it in your back pockets. Don't be hiding it. Don't be hoarding it. So when a caller comes, give out. You have these ulama, mashallah, they come and they're always asking for the sake of Allah. Look at the situation in Bangladesh right now. Guaranteed, if we had family right now, because most of us are settled here, but if we had family in Bangladesh, I guarantee you probably keep £1 or £2 just for that fish and chips and give the rest of it. Which is what our parents did, because they weren't stingy like me and you. If you ask me for £1 right now, I'll probably put out 10p and say, bro, you ask me for £1, I'll give you 10p. That's how stingy we've become. That's what's happening to our society. So we ask Allah Azza wa Jalla, based on the advices that Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, that these are the 3 useless things. Now I just want to move on to something closer to heart for us, based on the situation today. And this goes to anybody. We've lost a pillar of our society today. Because mothers, when mothers make dua for you, wallah, there's just so much passion in that dua. When they raise their hand, you just got to say to any mother, you got to say to make dua for me. The way they make dua, in the comparison to how us men make dua, their dua is just something else. They have a different connection with Allah because of the compassion and the method they have. Today, it's unfortunate for me and you, because we've lost an elder of our society, a mother of our society, a grandmother of our society, an auntie of our society, and it's unfortunate for us. But Islam has a solution for everything. And I say to the family members, Allah Azza wa Jalla, and I'll end on this verse, Allah Azza wa Jalla, you know the Quran, you know Islam addresses mental health in every way you can think about. We think mental health is made up. We think mental health is fake. We think depression and anxiety and stress, all of these things are fake. They're not. They're addressed in the Quran. Allah Azza wa Jalla to help me and you. You know, me and you, when we lose a loved one. Today you would have lost your beloved grandmother. What does Allah tell you? Allah says, وَعَسَىٰ أَن تُحِبُّوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ شَرٌّ لَكُمْ. You can apply this verse in any situation. You really love your mom. You know that degree you wanted to get, that GCSE you wanted to get, that business you wanted to get, that car you wanted to get, that house you wanted to get. You really loved it. You really wanted it. وَعَسَىٰ أَن تُحِبُّوا. You love it, man. وَهُوَ شَرٌّ لَكُمْ. Allah says, you know what? That wasn't good for you. And then Allah says, وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ. Only Allah knows what's good for you. Because you and me and you, yeah, we're arrogant. We're going to be thinking, what does my man know? I know better what I want. But Allah says, you know what? وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. You guys don't know anything. And this is a point where we step back and we let it humble us. We recognize who Allah is. We recognize that, you know what? وَاللَّهُ خَيْرُ الْمَاكِرِينَ. Allah is the best of planners. You got to think now, right? When it comes to a situation where you lose a loved one, Allah is telling you something better. وَعَسَىٰ أَن تُحِبُّوا. You love your mom, but that's you. That's you being selfish. But think about the person that's gone. They've left this temporary, stingy, stinking world, and they're living their life in Jannah, inshallah. Oh, which one's better? Come on. Jannah is definitely going to be far better. So that's why for us, we have to have a broader spectrum. We have to have a broader view of where we're going to go. And subhanAllah, I'll end it on this, just conscious of time, so we won't explain this any further. But for the brothers here and sisters listening, you know this masjid, this madrasa, subhanAllah, was initiated by mothers. And a proof of that, wallahi, a proof of that, is it was the mothers who prayed the first salah in this place. So the first tarawih was for women, for the sisters, for the mothers. The first janazah that took place in this place was also for a mother. And subhanAllah, we've set up the ghusl facilities. We didn't know. I could have gone, you could have gone. We didn't know who was going to go. But it just happens to be that Allah chose a mother to have the first ghusl here. And that should tell me and you something. Because you know, sadly, for many of us in this day and age, we cut off our relationship with our parents. Because me and you, we think we're arrogant, we think we know better. You think your mom doesn't have a degree, but you do. Your mom doesn't have a master's, but you do. That master's is useless because Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah just proved it to you. You know what your mother's got and your father has? They have the degree of being a mother and the degree of being a father, not provided by the Birmingham University or Aston University. It comes from the University of Allah Azza wa Jalla, because it's Allah that made them the parents. So let that sink in for a moment, inshallah. And so we ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to give us the true understanding of